I never thought my passion for gardening would make me enemies, but that was before I moved to Oakwood Estates and met Deborah Winters, or, as the neighborhood secretly called her, the HOA Karen. I'm David, a botanist teaching at Zaki University, and gardening has always been both my passion and refuge. When I purchased my modest home in Oakwood, I was thrilled about the spacious backyard where I could create the garden of my dreams. But little did I know that this simple pleasure would turn into a suburban nightmare filled with petty power struggles, sabotage, and ultimately, sweet justice. During my first week, while hauling specialty soil for my garden beds, Deborah appeared at my fence, a woman in her 50s, with a flawless blonde bob, and what I'd soon recognize as her unofficial uniform. Pressed khakis, a pastel polo, and an expression like she'd smelled something rotten. She stood silently watching me for 5 minutes before demanding to know what I was doing and reminding me about strict community landscaping bylaws. I smiled, wiped my hands on my jeans, introduced myself, explained my background in botany, and even offered her tomato seedlings as a peace gesture. But she recoiled, as if I'd offered poison, and insisted all modifications be submitted for approval to the HOA board she presided over, handing me a 5-pound binder of HOA regulations before marching off. That evening, I scoured the bylaws and was relieved to find vegetable and flower gardens in backyards explicitly permitted, so long as they were well maintained and not visible from the street. And mine wasn't. Out of courtesy, I emailed Deborah detailed plans, plant lists, and research citations, though technically I didn't need approval, and after receiving no response for a week, I moved ahead carefully, documenting every step. By summer, my backyard transformed into a paradise of rare blooms, vegetables, and endangered native plants I was cultivating for a university research project, attracting neighbors with gardening tips and fresh produce while garnering attention from the local paper and a regional gardening magazine. Eventually, earning me a coveted invitation to the prestigious Regional Gardens of Excellence tour. But the day after the local paper announced my inclusion, I found a $300 violation notice citing excessive plant growth and unauthorized agricultural activity, which was absurd since my garden was immaculate and compliant. I requested a meeting with the HOA board where, to my surprise, most seemed embarrassed by the violation, especially Linda, a retired florist who'd praised my garden a week prior. But Deborah dominated the conversation, claiming my jungle was an eyesore, attracting pests and lowering property values. I calmly explained the garden's invisibility from the street, and Linda later confided that Deborah was furious because she'd won the Best Lawn Award 3 years in a row, and there was talk of adding a Best Garden category I'd surely win. Over the next week, Deborah went door to door, showing exaggerated photos of my garden, accusing it of harboring vermin and even hinting my research plants were illegal. But my security cameras, originally for documenting wildlife interactions, recorded everything. The night before the tour, motion alerts woke me at 3 a.m. And I checked the footage to see Deborah, clad in dark clothing and gloves, spraying my plants with herbicide, targeting rare tomatoes and endangered milkweed while smirking with satisfaction. I rushed outside, and the scent of chemicals hung in the air as leaves began to curl. I worked frantically through the night to save what I could, but by dawn, 40% of my garden was lost, including irreplaceable research specimens. After documenting the damage, I filed a police report, showed them the footage, and the officer confirmed it qualified as felony property damage, given the estimated $5,000 loss. Before the police arrived, I paid Deborah a visit. When she answered, perfectly composed in pearls and a cardigan, I informed her of the police's arrival and that the vandal had been caught on my research cameras, which uploaded footage to a cloud server from multiple angles. Her face paled as the reality settled in, and a police cruiser arrived right on cue. By afternoon, Deborah was arrested for criminal trespass and felony vandalism, and the university pressed additional charges for destroying endangered research plants funded by a grant. The neighborhood rallied, with texts of support, neighbors bringing food, and several offering to help replant. Linda arrived teary-eyed, horrified at the damage, and mentioned the board had called an emergency meeting. The community center was packed the following week as Vice President Howard called a vote to remove Deborah as HOA president. Neighbors lined up to recount years of nitpicking, arbitrary rule enforcement, and intimidation, and when the unanimous vote was taken, the tension broke as Deborah stormed in, disheveled, protesting her 15-year reign, blaming me and my ridiculous garden, while the room fell silent. I remained seated, letting the security footage and facts speak for themselves as Howard formally declared her removal, requesting she leave given the pending charges. Deborah faltered, her voice cracking as she stammered, "But I'm Deborah Winters," then fled the room defeated. And for the first time since moving in, Oakwood Estates finally felt like home.